Good evening, everyone. Welcome to beautiful downtown Grand Forks. Tonight's meeting is the Grand Forks City Council Committee of the Whole, Monday, January 12th, under item 1, call to order 1.1, welcome to roll call.
Weigel.
Here.
Osowski. Here. Berg. Here. Lensky.
Here.
Friedolfs.
Here.
Dean.
Here.
And President Sandy.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. Under informational items 2.1, English Coulee flood study. Mr. Grasser. Short timer.
Thank you. Good evening, Council President Sandy, members of the committee. You remember this goes back, this is a refresher a little bit and an outlook. This goes back to studies that we started a couple years ago, and some would recognize we've got increasing summer rain events. We've got actually increasing flows coming from some of the spring melt, and spring melt with maybe even rain on top of it. We have completed, if you recall, the South End Drainway evaluation. We solved that one by adding storage, and we've been under construction, and we'll do another year project worth of construction out there. We also did an evaluation. AE2S created a new model that showed how all these systems work together. And we also did share that with Drain 4, which is that ditch on the south side of Merrifield Road. And just to mention our team here that's tonight, Sean Gaddy, AE2S, and Christian Danielson from our engineering staff. So they've been running this thing, basically. So that's kind of just a little bit of background on the study. This particular one, now we're into the last piece of it is English Coulee Drainage Basin. This is just an outline of the image of the drainage basin itself. Not going to go over very much of it. It's a large basin, and it drains from southwest to northeast, just like everything does here in the valley. It's got some complications, which I'm not even going to get into on the rural areas. For our purposes, the main thing is to recognize, as part of our flood protection project, there was an English Coulee diversion channel on the west side of town, a couple miles west of the interstate. That intercepts those overland flows from coming into town. And then this green area that's east of that is all the in-town drainage. During the summer, that water drains through the natural channel of the English Coulee. During high flood events, the gates get closed from the river to keep that water from backing into town, and then that runs with a pump station. So you'll hear me repeat this a number of times. It's a very complicated system because of the different dynamics that are all going on within this program. This is a little more detail on the English Coulee in town. Again, we have, like we've seen on the South End Drainway, we've got a portion of that drainage that's a fully developed area. That water comes in really fast, and it hits the system really quick. We also then have other drainage areas that are rural in nature. In this case, most of that's basically on the west side of the interstate. It's a very large drainage system. It drains probably half the city of Grand Forks going, through this system of one side or the other. So again, adding to the dynamics, you got the rural component, you got the urban component, summer rain, drainage, gates closed, pump stations. Remember, a pump station has quite a bit less capacity than a ditch. So the way a pump station works is when the water comes in, the way the Corps designed it, the water comes in and the pumps can't keep up. So the water starts ponding on the north end. We got obtained drainage easements on the north end of town for that ponding to occur. So they calculated a dynamic between eventually the drainage starts to taper off and the pumps catch up, and then they start drawing the pond back down. So again, you've got part of this is a pond, part of it is a channel. You're going to recognize a pretty common theme there as I repeat this often enough. It's complicated. I'm not going to go over this. We did 27 model runs just to really what we're trying to do is understand the dynamics of how things were working. And we also did some runs on, searching for that simple solution. Is there an easy solution, a cheap, easy solution to move forward? Like we found on the South End Drainway, we solved that problem with storage. It wasn't terribly expensive and relatively straightforward. Here, our problem is we've got so much of the area that's already developed. We really don't have a lot of storage area. So what did we learn? We've learned that the existing conditions on the English Coulee, the model is now showing that our expected water levels are somewhere between the 1985 flood insurance rate map levels and the current flood insurance rate map levels. And that's good news and bad news. It's higher than where we're at, but the good news is most of this area was developed based on the 1985 map. And so they were built to those higher elevations, the vast majority of things. It's not surprising given the dynamics, the new better models and things like that, that we're seeing some of those elevations. Again, repeating again, system is extremely dynamic, got a lot of multiple features. There's lots of culverts, there's lots of bridges, there's lots of dams. They all impact water elevations differently as you go upstream and downstream of the coulee. We talked about gates open and gates closed. Think about it in terms of gates open is it acts more like a channel. You're just trying to move water through the system. Gates closed, you're trying to pump, so you're really dealing with volume of water at that point in time. Those two things are so different that one solution normally won't solve both situations. Again, south end drainway, sometimes we see the channel act like a channel, sometimes we see it act like retention basins, not as it goes through that. That initial flush kind of uses up a lot of the channel capacity and it starts to do some ponding. So it's really it's dynamic, but it really reminds me very, very much of what we saw in the south end drainway. We did identify or talk about a single point of failure. No earth-shattering news on that. We've always kind of knew that it exists, but we just did look at it a little more under this particular study. And I'll get to some of this stuff a little bit later in more detail. If this were a test, this would be the answer to the test right here. I'm kind of giving you the end quick. Flows from west I-29 need to be controlled heavily or eliminated. The English Coulee pump capacity improvements are really going to be needed. I think we're going to have to upsize those pumps under most conditions that I can envision. It's a matter of how much. I think there's a plan to, we want to look at disconnecting backwater flooding areas. And again, there'll be a map that'll talk about that a little bit later. And I think we're probably going to need to have some other discharge points to just get the water out of the system. The good news is that the current model that we're working at shows that the English Coulee diversion has some additional capacity in it. So if we can get some of that water diverted out the diversion channel, helps solve a lot of problems. This is just an overall map. You'll see some individual, each one of these red dots here, there's going to be an individual small insert that'll talk about it. This just to give you a general geographic idea of when we pull them up, kind of where we're at. There is you'll see on the left side, there's a green, yellow, and blue, or green, yellow, and red. Those are, you'll see on each one of those, the green are going to be concepts that we think we want to carry forward and initial. They've got enough promise to keep moving on. The yellow are projects that in general the general concepts may look okay, but we need to flesh them out, and they're probably dependent upon something that we're going to do in green. There's one red one that we did drop. So if you remember what the south end drainway looks like, this would almost looks a little bit familiar. This shows a concept plan as to how to develop on the west side of the interstate. Just looking at roughly the volumes, the goal that we had in here was to try to make these ponds similarly sized to what we have on the east side of the interstate. So we didn't have a huge discrepancy between, how we deal with pond construction as things develop on east versus west. But to make that happen, we did include the provisions of a drainage channel going south on 48th. If you've driven 48th Street to the north, it's just going to be a mirror image of that road with a ditch. One of the concepts we did look at in here, though, is trying to control some of that runoff about every half a mile. So there might be some checks in there. The theory behind that is you're trying to hold that water back on each individual area instead of letting it all roll downhill and create, a major flooding event downstream. We're going to include these concepts as we work to develop the 47th Avenue South interchange, and you will also see coming up some concepts on extending 48th Street. Again, remember 48th Street has to connect to 47th Avenue to make that whole interchange process work. So this is, again, just a very conceptual level drawing. We looked at, okay, what if we just block the flow off at the interstate? Can we push it back by gravity back through the diversion channel? How much capacity might be in the diversion channel? Again, it's just from that concept, we want to carry that forward. And the way we'll implement that is we have talked to the Corps of Engineers. We've gotten some encouraging feedback, I think, on having some capacity in the diversion. This is really the low-lying fruit, but we need to investigate this because a lot of other concepts are going to be dependent upon, can we put water in that diversion channel or not? This another concept, not very exciting. This is the blue dot up there is where the pump station is. Just talking about should we look, we want to look at, what kind of capacity improvements might we want to have in there. Again, this has got a green arrow on it. This one of the concepts we want to carry forward. English Coulee backwater. I said I'd come back to that. What these areas circled in yellow, what happens is we found out in the modeling that, under the current map, these areas aren't shown as being wet because there's no direct connection, overland connection from the coulee back into these areas. But what we have found, there's some ponding that occurs back in these areas as the water works its way back through the storm sewer system. So when we talk about it, one of the concepts we want to do, I don't think it's terribly complicated. We want to look at the possibility of being able to maybe disconnect some of those points, put in a small pump station so that in the event when we do have high water on the English Coulee, we can basically control that water and keep it from just backing up through the system. So it's one of the studies we want to do. This one now we're into the yellow or orange areas. They're areas that we think bear some consideration, but wouldn't be ready to move forward on them yet. This is the single point of failure. This is where the English Coulee crosses Demers Avenue and the BNSF tracks. This is more of an insurance policy probably than anything else. In the event that some of these culverts would become blocked or whatever, risk from just a risk standpoint, this is an area we might want to develop some redundancy. So the pump station probably wouldn't run all the time. It could run on and off, but it would be a backup plan in the event that we did end up with some sort of the restrictions. Particularly concerned with the BNSF component because we don't have direct ability to go in there and inspect those. So again, this is more of an insurance policy type thing. This is scary. This is yellow here too, but what we did conceptually, we looked at an English Coulee. Can we pump our way out of it? Can we store our way out of it? Or do we need combinations thereof? This was kind of one of these bookend, we call them bookends, like what's the biggest storage area we could possibly find and would that solve the problem? Obviously we'd have concerns about this. This would take out conceptually a lot of developable land, et cetera, et cetera. So this is really, again, just a concept level. Because there's so much development land out there, there's not a lot of other alternatives. Unfortunately, even with this level of storage, it doesn't really solve our problem. So, but again, this is more of a bookend. It tells us that, okay, there's no simple storage solution. One of the other more complicated ones that we looked at would be to actually put in a pump station probably along 11th Avenue, somewhere along the Coulee, and pumping it to the west side of the interstate. And either, depending upon what we find out on the diversion, can we pump that directly into the diversion channel? Do we put it into a large storage area? Do we include a storage area or a combination thereof? Because a lot of it has to do with the flow and the timing. Do we store it for a while until we can start discharging it into the diversion channel after those peak events? I'm talking fast, and this is one is more complicated, but it's one that we are looking at, and we'll work into the rest of because if we pump the water out of 11th Avenue, guess what? We don't need the insurance piece going across BNSF. We'll have another. This one is another one that we kind of are on hold on. This is near the outlet of the English Coulee. It's just north of Gateway Drive. Right now, there's a low-level crossing. It's got very minimal culvert capacity through it. We looked at installing some culverts. In this case, it was 5 48-inch culverts, maybe looking at widening the channel. I like this option, but it doesn't impact the 100-year event. The 100-year event, the water is high enough over the road. It doesn't have an impact on the 100-year event. I like it because I think I'd like to see these lower level events be able to pass through more easily and more hydraulically efficiently, and also help. I think it'll help get rid of some of the silting and stuff that we're seeing in some of the system. So again, this one is on hold, just depending upon what we find out with some of the other events. This one is really getting outside the box and probably more focused on future development on the west side of the interstate. We put a pump station in there. Where do we go with it? How do we get the water just completely out of the system? You know, do we pump it back into the diversion? Do we take it to legal drain 4? Do we pump it straight to the river? Again, very conceptually, we haven't carried this one very far, but again, I'm just trying to show we're kind of walk our way step by step through options. This is the one that we did drop. We looked at, can we pump the water out of the English Coulee and take it straight to the river? And for simplicity, we just said, let's hook onto the Vail Circle pump station system and take it to the river. That quantity of water removed, does that solve our problem? Unfortunately, it didn't. So again, given the complexities of I can't hardly imagine trying to route a pipe like this through town. That one is just to let you know, we did look at it again as part of a pump station pumping conceptual solution. This is really nothing more than kind of a cheat sheet, one pager on some of the things that we talked about. You can see the green, yellow, red. Now I'm going to get into what I call a little bit of our playbook going forward, at least from my perspective. I think what we're looking at. I think we want to take the broad study that we've done now. I think we want to focus these into more focused, specific items. And so I put this as early 2026 type things that you're going to see as a city council. Again, west of I-29. The ditch, I think we want to adopt some of those development concepts, again, just like we did on the South End Drainway. We want to update those for the area west of the interstate. Talked about how critical the English Coulee diversion was. I think we actually want to, the Corps has given us about as much as they can, I think, until we step into like the 408 review. 408 is a permit designation that they have. And I think we want to investigate that and actually start some of that 408 review. Determine exactly what, when, and how can we put that water into the west. English Coulee Pump Station, similarly, because this is part of our flood control project, we want to talk with the Corps of Engineers about feasibility. Just what does that look like if we start adding pumps, even without knowing the size and stuff of the pumps. Number 4, we hadn't really talked about, but when we did the project development out here, there was a lot of monitoring sites that monitored the flows and versus the rainfall events. I think there's some advantage for us to keep a few of these sites working so we understand how these drainage features are working. And I think some of that data will probably actually work its way into some permit data at some later date. So those are kind of those early things that we need to talk about. The next pieces are a lot of times going to be dependent upon what we might find out in these early studies. Again, I just called it late 26, early 27 type investigations. Again, how do we control that water from the English Coulee west of the interstate? Do we look at storage? Do we look at pumping? Single point of failure plan. Do we look at that, or do we combine that with something else? Again, determine how to disconnect the English Coulee backflow areas. The only reason that isn't up at the top is some of the solutions we have that might lower the English Coulee elevations might eliminate those backflow areas themselves. So, and then just feasibility of multi-layered solutions. We probably need to bring several things in together. I think we pretty well eliminated, again, that simple one item solution. Nope, not quite there. All this is going to cost money, and the studies, are going to be the first share. Now, remember, the state, fortunately, the state of North Dakota does have some cost sharing policies for communities and rural areas on on flood control and those kinds of things. We're currently accessing one of those programs, the Rural Flood Control Program. And without going through all the calculations, basically we're at about a 50% cost share right now with the state of North Dakota on these projects. As we move forward, we'll look at some of these individually and see which category might best we might best fit into. But I think everything that we're doing here will have the potential for some level of significant cost share from the state of North Dakota. With that,
Thank you, Mr. Grasser. I'll open up for questions, but can you take a step back, Mr. Grasser? You said that this was continuation study on previous studies and we enhanced capacity in the South End Drainway. Can you explain why we're doing all of that? What was the impetus for all of this?
the impetus of this goes back several years when we started observing. We had one in particular, one snow melt rainfall event that occurred, and we were observing much higher flows for that time of the year than what I think we were anticipating. We looked at it, it was kind of outside of the numbers, so to speak. What was really particularly concerning about that to me is it happened about 4 or 5 days or a week before the river came up, and we figured we were going to have to be closing the gates on the South End Drainway. Actually, well, we'd had them closed on the diversion also. And that was very concerning because knowing how the pumps are sized, if you start greatly exceeding the flows that were anticipated to come in and you got to deal with them a pump, you don't have a lot of options there anymore. Again, you have very limited capacity relative to what would go through a channel. So that kind of was the impetus. We talked about that with the council. Gosh, we had at least 2-3 years ago. So that's really what started all this. And we started looking at all the open channel basins that would really, the in-town pump stations, not so much. We don't have such a big volume, so it's not as big of a concern. But these larger areas, especially when we're bringing in the rural areas, those increased flows and so we got the flow issue. We also have total volume, and we are seeing that those are issues for us.
So ultimately, the goal is to keep us from have overland flooding,
We want to keep people from
filling basements.
Well, that's the practical is flooded basements, ponding in the street. And we also, in case FEMA ever comes back through and does any remapping, we don't want to end up having properties. The goal would have these elevations low enough so we're not bringing property in and require that would then end up requiring flood insurance when they purchase. So those are ultimately the long-term goals. I'm not saying the FEMA's ready to walk in or anything like that, but I think it's prudent planning at this part. We've set some of our goals to try to prevent that.
Great, thank you. Mr. Veen, did you have
Just a couple quick ones. Mr. Grasser, you talked about, really you're divided into two separate drainage areas, right? One outside of town, west of the diversion channel, and then what goes through town and onto the river, right? So
Yes.
each one of them, once you close the weir, whatever it is, you got two separate systems operating,
Correct?
and each one would have various needs to it. The idea was with the diversion is to keep that water going around town and not impact us, and then just focus on what we have internally. And you mentioned the water flow naturally is north and east, right, on the outside of town? Well, actually in town too, for the most part. And you can locate, you had a system of ponds, if I remember, in that one view, and you would strategically locate them because the roads all act as dams kind of, or whatever, to be able to make use of the existing terrain or grades to be able to function, make the best use of that. Is that right?
Yep.
Then on the inside town, just one more question here. You talked about the 11th Avenue storage. That's the one over on 11th and 34th Street, right?
That one. Yep.
Can you also use Ray Richards for storage?
No is a strong term, but I'm going to say there's a lot of hydraulic complexities that go with this about the timing of we can't just take all the flows and put them into storage because there's too much. So part of the trick of this thing is trying to take that very top piece, keep this dry until the top piece comes in, and then peel that off. And so there's got to be a really close proximity for hydraulic connectivity, and you got to have the depth. Ray Richards, it's not apparent to me exactly how you do that and still even leave a golf course there. I mean, this is a lot of acres of storage in here, and it didn't solve the problem. So it's a matter of finding a solution that is implementable and has some something that's politically and financially acceptable.
Okay, and then the one last thing is we know that Demers Avenue box culvert is the biggest problem we have there. Is there a way to expand and enlarge that box culvert?
I think there are the two problems with under the railroad track. We're talking really.
Mm-hmm.
The two problems with that is you're dealing with BNSF, and so to put a box culvert in there would be akin to adding a bridge from a process standpoint. And I would also be concerned if we put in an uncontrolled box in there. Remember, right now, the flooding that you see downstream to the north of Demers Avenue is really restricted by the straw that's going through Demers Avenue. So if we just open that up and let that go through on another box, we're going to bring impacts. We're going to improve things to the south, but we'll impact things to the north. That's why, in my mind, the best thing, I think the reason it's a pumping solution, at least feasibility right now, I think BNSF is more familiar with allowing a pressure pipe, for lack of a better term. I think it's a simpler process than putting in a bridge. And then we can also only operate that during times when there's plenty of capacity downstream, so we're not impacting people. So that was just the concept why physically, yeah, we can put it, we could try to go down a path of pursuing another box culvert or something through there.
Thank you, Mr. Veen. Further comments? Yes, Ms. Lansky?
I just have a quick one also. You referenced 1985. Was there a significance to 1985, the insurance rate?
The 85 was the map that they produced. We've had a number of insurance maps with the city of Grand Forks over the years. In 1979, we had a major flood that came overland it was primarily from the English Coulee and flooded through the city and caused a lot of flooding. Fortunately, back then, there actually wasn't a lot of development in that area. That instituted some upstream, if you go far enough back, there's actually a dry dam. I'm trying to remember. I think it's right up in here. That's to attenuate some of the water from the rural. And there's actually a second diversion channel that channels that. So in other words, it was a very traumatic event. Once they did that and then reduced those flows into town, they updated the flood insurance rate map, and that update that included those completed features was called the 1985 firm.
And
I think the
then
work was actually completed in 84.
last question. When you talk about large storage, is that the same thing as a pond?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you. Further comments? None? Mr. Grasser, thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate the attention. Again, this is kind of a playbook. Hopefully, my intention when you see some of these things coming through in the future, you can see how they might fit with a larger whole.
And of course, at a 52% cost share, all of these things are going to be coming to the council for future consideration. Thank you.
Even on that, we have to remember, I think this is an augmentation to our flood protection project. We don't have the Corps of Engineers that's going to help run a project and help pay for it. So even if we get significant state cost share, we'll say up to 60%, which, cities are getting right now. This is going to be a major financial push for the city to put this plan together.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great. Appreciate it, Mr. Grasser. Item 2.2, Bitcoin ATM ban discussion. Mr. Phelan.
Councilmember Sandy, Detective Reedinger brought, kind of highlighted some concerns that he and the police department had regarding Bitcoin ATM machines. So we thought this evening would be a good time for an update. And I just want to thank Detective Reedinger. If you go to any awards presentation at the Grand Forks Police Department. It's often highlighting some of his terrific work on behalf of the citizens of Grand Forks and helping people out and in many cases getting people's money back. So I just want to, Detective Riedinger is going to lead out, and then Mr. Gosta is going to come through and maybe provide some advice to you on what he thinks a way forward is. And we really want to get your feedback on what you'd like to see.
Thank you, Mr. Phelan. Detective? Good evening.
Thank you. Thank you, Council, for responding to my emails and allowing me a chance to come up here and talk. As many of you know, based on the email that I sent, we've had kind of a bit of a flushing of Bitcoin in general fraud, but Bitcoin ATM scams in the last few years. I think the number that I sent out there is kind of staggering, considering it's October of 2022. Since October of 2022, $466,000 worth of scams just in Grand Forks revolving around the Bitcoin kiosks, and victims losing that money. I'll give a brief explanation as to why it's difficult and why I think we need to kind of at least discuss as to how we can handle this. Maybe put our heads together and see what we can do and put some pressure maybe on these companies to make some changes. August 1st, North Dakota had some legislation that came through that I was hopeful that we were going to be able to close some loopholes and put a stop to some of these large transactions. I do have a victim here who last summer sent almost $24,000 in one transaction on a tech scam. October or August 1st was supposed to drop that down to the maximum per customer per day was $2,000. Now I find out that there's a loophole that the scammers have been able to figure out in North Dakota state law. I have reached out to a couple state senators, Barta and Sickler. They were both sponsors and presidents of the bill. Explained this to them, and unfortunately, legislation doesn't go until 2027. Maybe to try to close those loopholes. I've also spoken with Department of Financial Institutions about this, and they've been very helpful, and they're going to do what they can. But again, with absent of any changes in law, it's tough for them to put any pressure on some of these companies that, whether they intentionally have these loopholes or not, I mean, that's to be determined. But as I go through this thing, you guys are kind of, hopefully I'll make sense of it as to the issues we have, and maybe as a city we can kind of come up with something, because I think a lot of people think that, the police department and the city is here to protect them physically, but we should also be protecting them financially. And these are hard when you lose, when you have people that lose $25,000, $35,000 in one shot. That could have been avoided by just a couple of simple things here that I'll go through. So I'll try not to bore you guys too much on this. So according to the FBI studies, this is from 2024, 10,956 complaints of Bitcoin fraud in general. We're all aware that most crimes don't get reported. So whenever I point this out, just know that that number is the bare minimum of it. Most crimes, including financial crimes, don't get reported. In 2024, 246 million reported of crypto ATM. FBI hasn't officially released it, but the number is 333 million for this year. When they get the studies out, that was put in a thing. For Grand Forks alone, since I like to keep that at the October 13th of 2022 is when we started paying attention. There is no code for Bitcoin ATM fraud. It's just fraud and theft in general, depending on it. So these are the ones that I was able to find. And these are the ones that since I've kind of taken over the position that I've been able to track. So 466,000 is the number. I'm going to guess it's a little higher because there's probably some cases that I don't know about that didn't make it up to me. But that's a staggering number when you think about 3 years, about $120,000 a year going out to Bitcoin ATMs on fraud. So the unfortunate thing is most of it are targeted around older adults. Elderly is considered 60 and above. So I'm sorry if anybody is 60 and they don't want to be considered elderly, but they target the elderly mainly because they have that money. Most 18-year-olds don't have $25,000. They'll still take their $2,000 if they can get it, but they target heavily on the elderly because they want that retirement, and they'll do anything they can to get it. As I'll show you here, these are some of the reports that I had. I thought I deleted the name, so I apologize. Some of those numbers are kind of staggering. I'd have $57,000 one, $17,000, $12,000, $150,000 one is a gal that basically sold her house and thought she was investing in cryptocurrency, and over a span of 2 years had been sending money through Bitcoin ATMs and stuff. And then my victim that's on here. So those are some staggering numbers here. I know I've spoken to Councilwoman Osowski about this, so she's well aware on how cryptocurrency works. But if some of you guys don't understand how this works, the reason why they want it is because it's essentially anonymous. It is, but it isn't. Any one of you guys right now on your phone can download a number of different wallet apps, Coinbase Wallet, Trust Wallet, and stuff like that, and generate a wallet. Takes a matter of seconds to do that. The only one that knows whose wallet that is you. The government doesn't know it, and nobody knows it. The only time anybody finds out whose wallet that owns is when you attach it to an exchange. And think of an exchange like a bank. You want to cash that money out, you got to attach that wallet to it so you can make that transfer. The bad guys, and I'll show you a tracking here shortly. The bad guys rarely attach that to an exchange in the United States. They'll attach it to an exchange, a pop-up exchange in a country we don't have any control over. The FBI, Secret Service, the feds have a tough time getting this money back once it make it overseas, and it almost always cashes out overseas. If we're so lucky to get something that pops up on an exchange in the United States, it just goes to another victim who's caught up on some other scam, and this was seed money for him to get confidence that he can withdraw money. They sent the money, so then he'd reinvest more money. So we never really get lucky with cryptocurrency. That's why they want it. This is essentially, when I say it's anonymous, it's anonymous, and yet it's insulting because it's on this thing called a blockchain. Every transaction in cryptocurrency is transparent. It's out there. It's basically on this block called a blockchain ledger. Think of it like a bank statement. That's out there for the public. So that's the insulting thing is when I get a victim that sent $24,000, I can tell her I can see it. I can see where your money's at. I just can't grab that money. It's great that we can track it. It's great that it's transparent and it's out there, but it's pointless if we don't know who owns that wallet, right? That circle right there, that's the wallet address. Only the bad guys who own that wallet have the key to that address. Good luck trying to, maybe the feds have a good AI system nowadays where they're going to be able to get these, but they're held with a pretty sophisticated key to be able to get a hold of that. So they have a tough time. Even if we know that there's $30 million sitting in that wallet, that's for fraud victims, it's tough to even for them to get in. So this is what a blockchain looks like. This is what a trace looks like. So you can imagine how hard it is to try to figure out. All they do is they make one wallet, they send it to another wallet, they send it to another wallet, send it to another wallet. Each one of those points is a new wallet. So the minute somebody sends that money, either they have bots or AI doing it, and they just filter it out, they separate it, and they make it so difficult for law enforcement that eventually we just kind of have to throw our hands up because good luck tracing that. Rarely do we ever get lucky that it goes from one wallet to an exchange. I've never had such a case. And if that was the case, you've got the easiest and the dumbest scammer out there because they don't know what they're doing, and I would love to get one like that. But this is a standard trace. And each one of those, they can sit at each end of the line. That's a wallet that the money, whatever money's got separated, it's just sitting in there. And they could sit in there and sit in there and sit in there. It's free money to them, so they can wait till Bitcoin continues to go up, or they could decide to cash it out and they'll just send it to an exchange. So essentially, this is kind of how a fraud works. They make a contact. Sometimes it's a tech support one. We've had a lot of jury duty ones where people think law enforcement is extorting them to pay off a warrant and they want Bitcoin. I've had a lot of those. Tech support scams where they're believing that their bank accounts compromised, so they're told to go get all that money out and they're going to send it to this bank account, which is that large wallet address, and then convince the victim that that's their account, and then they go and they send them to a Bitcoin kiosk. And many of you probably have walked by them and didn't know what they were, thought they were just a regular ATM. They usually apply pressure, make it urgent. You got to hurry up and get this money out of your account, or you got to hurry up and send this money. We're going to come and arrest you right now. They go to the bank. They're told to lie to the bank. They get the cash. That's a sad thing. The banks are very well educated on this, and usually a lot of banks have checklists. They'll go through them. They'll try to encourage them, but the victim is so brainwashed at that point that they'll continue to lie and insist that they get this money. So the banks do a really good job. And then they go to a kiosk, and next thing you know, they're sending all that money. And once it's gone, it's gone. Usually sometimes they're given a QR code that they can scan, but recently they're just given accounts. So these are the kiosks that we have in Grand Forks. We have 4 Bitcoin Depot, we have 1 Coin Flip, and we have 4 BitStop. The problem with all 3 of these, so August 1st, we had a $2,000 maximum per customer per machine. So theoretically, the bad guy could send them to Bitcoin Depot, do 2,000, send them to Coin Flip, do 2,000, send them to. The odds of that happening are slim. Not to say it wouldn't happen, but and that's ideal if there were a process to identify the customer. None of these kiosks have to show any proof. The bad guys basically have pre-made accounts with a phone number and a PIN, and they send them to either any of these kiosks, and they can say, okay, send $2,000 to this phone number. Here's the PIN. Okay, here's another phone number. Here's another PIN, and each one they can do it 2,000. The reason what prompted me to bring this up is because I had a victim that sent 2,700. So she sent 2,000, and she said 700. We were never going to be able to stop that first 2,000, but she should never have been able to do that 700. I had a conversation, a Teams meeting with Department of Financial Institutions a couple weeks ago, and a West Fargo detective that was in the same boat as I was had a victim that sent 19,000 in 9 to 10 transactions, doing the same thing. At no time were they ever asked to present an identification, which every one of these machines is capable of doing, because when you set up an account, there's a little barcode scanner, and you got to do that. Coin Flip, they send you a number, then you have to take a picture of it. But every one of these are very capable of doing that. Why they don't do that, I don't know. But it circumvents state law. One of the big things that they got to do is, according to state laws, they got to put these friction warnings on each, which should hopefully explain to the victim that if you're talking to somebody and they're any one of these points here are the reason why you're talking to them and you're told to send Bitcoin, that's great. But it's all for naught if you just have a standard user agreement that you can just scan through. This is Bitcoin Depot's form that just imagine being yelled at by a sheriff who you think is a sheriff. They're going to come and arrest you. Are you going to read through that? You're probably going to hit proceed, even though we should. Not going to lie to say we should read it, but most don't. It's pretty generic, pretty bland. And then to enter the phone number thing, it's great that they have that little warning down at the bottom. If someone sent you this to this machine, provided you with a QR code or wallet code and funds, it's most likely a scam. I just find it odd placing, considering how much dead space there is right below the keypad. I think that they could have done a little bit better job of warning and making it a little bit more in your face kind of thing. This is a Coin Flips thing. It's just as generic as a Bitcoin Depot's, if not worse, because the screen is very small, but it's the same thing. You can just scroll down there, hit OK, and away you go. This is the one I'm most impressed with, and I do believe that they cared about. This is BitStops. Whoever put together this GUI, did a good job. This is ideal. Each warning has its own page. You have to press, you have to acknowledge, and even at the end, the big one is that law enforcement impersonator, where you have to push, I am not being scammed, let's continue. This is ideal. This is what I would like to, if we have any power to get the other two to follow this type of format, that would be great. We can only do so much. I get it. You got to put some of the responsibility on the victim to slow things down. But again, imagine somebody yelling at you, you're going to get arrested. Imagine somebody yelling at you saying, you got to hurry up and move this money kind of thing. Those other two interfaces, I just think are bland, and they could have done better. This is ideal. The sad thing about all three of these, though, is that there's zero identification process. You don't have to can't scan your ID, or you don't have to scan your ID. You can access them all by phone number and a PIN. CoinFlip sends you a code on your phone, but it's still the same thing. At no point do they ask for an ID. So I think those two things, if we can get those two things moving, that would be ideal and that would shut down a lot of it. There's a reason why that BitStop one hasn't been used in 2 years, and I think it's that that interface. There's a reason why they don't send them to that one. They send them to that Bitcoin Depot one, where it's that generic one. And these are just some of the suggestions I would like to have. Basically, the large unavoidable scam warnings in red, as much as you can. Confirmations on each one. Prominent signage. I did go around and put signs as best I could. I don't think I have the right to put it on the machine themselves, but I asked the businesses that housed them if I could put a sign warning them. The sad thing is, they could be right next to that victim. One of the most used kiosks, the sign, the business got frustrated with so many people getting scammed on that they're the ones that taped it right next to the machine. So literally, you're like, here's the screen and here's the machine and here's my warning. In nice big black and red bold with a stop sign, and people just don't see it. So there is only so much we can do. They're so focused, they're so brainwashed. But I do think that we still need to make an effort to put better signage and educate the businesses on signs of fraud. When you see somebody standing at a machine for an hour and a half pumping in $100 bills, that should draw some attention. And the machine that Joanne sat at is literally eyesight of the cashier. She would have had to. And nobody came and talked to her. Pumping in almost $24,000 worth with $100 bills, $240 $100 bills. That would have taken a while. I would like to see if we can do some transaction safeguards. Again, I don't know what our limits are as a city. Obviously, everything that I want doesn't make it so. But the ability to cancel those transactions. So even if we were able to get to somebody like Joanne at the $20,000 mark, that money, they say the minute she pumps it in, is unretrievable. I don't know how that's possible, considering that they do the transaction at the end. They don't send, okay, $100 bill, that's a Bitcoin transfer. $100 bill, that's a Bitcoin transfer. They should be able to cancel that mid transaction and get that money back. And then maybe even a cooling off period where it stays in limbo. Like if they're going to do it to send $25,000 or theoretically it's only $2,000, but send $2,000 to BitStop, that sits in BitStop's little escrow account for 24 hours before it makes to that wallet. So that we have a chance, the victim has a chance to go home and talk to somebody and then realize that they're scammed and then do something about it. And then easy receipts and full reimbursements for customers on their first fraudulent transaction. That wasn't originally in the state bill. I was disappointed to find out that got struck at the end. So it'd be nice to have something like that. And then make a registry so we know where all Bitcoin kiosks are. I kind of went around, found most of them. I believe I got them all. There were some that were actually, I was happy to hear that got taken out. So we're short a few, so that's good. And that's my brief show on my Bitcoin kiosk issue.
Thank you, Detective. There are questions? Yes, Ms. Lansky?
I guess I don't understand what the point of scanning your ID. If Dana was being scammed and he was pumping in hundreds, what would showing his ID do?
Okay, so because the state limit per customer is $2,000. So if you scan that ID, you can put $2,000 in. You shouldn't then be able to do another $2,000 at that point.
And then I'm old, I'll admit it. I don't understand the purpose of the Bitcoin ATM. Like a normal ATM, you put your card in, you get some cash back.
Mm-hmm.
So what's the point of a Bitcoin ATM?
Here lies the question, right? The standard fee for a Bitcoin ATM is 20 to 30%. So you're going to so theoretically, if you want to be an investor in Bitcoin, it's your gateway in there. Or if you want to send somebody money in Bitcoin, that's how you can do that transaction. But you'd be hurting pretty hard to all of a sudden, you're going to send $1,000, want to send somebody $1,200. So you send them $1,200 and that money's only worth $1,000 now.
So that it doesn't spit
And
me
then,
out
and that's not even
card.
including the withdrawal fee. So if we don't have so when we say Bitcoin ATMs, it makes it sound like it's two-way street. We only have sending, we don't have receiving. So we can't withdraw in any of the machines in Grand Forks. There are some Bitcoin kiosks in the United States where it allows you. I'd hate to know what that fee is. So theoretically, if you had somebody sending money, you're getting hit on a fee buying it and sending it to that person, and then they're likely going to get hit on a fee on the way back. So to answer your question, I don't know, because no logical investor who wants to buy Bitcoin, I think, is willing to take a 20% hit, even for the anonymity. And that's always what everybody says, is that I don't want the government to know I'm having this money. Well, eventually the government's going to know, because you're going to want that money, so you're going to have to cash it out anyway. So that logic that this is, I want to remain anonymous and buy Bitcoin, I just don't think that flies anymore. So to answer your question, I don't know what their true purpose is. I do believe that in like 2012 and 2013, when they started popping up, it was legitimate. I'm not saying it's still not a legitimate, but an avenue, because it was a new hot thing. I can buy Bitcoin. I can go to this machine. I don't know what the fees were at the time. But nowadays, with all these exchanges, and you can go to an exchange and pay 2% a fee to buy the same thing, and it's just as easy. So that's my take on it. I don't know what their legitimate purpose is.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Lunsky. Ms. Osowski?
Yeah, I have lots of comments. So originally, when we spoke about this, you talked to me about a ban on them. Is that no longer what you're looking for?
I think I think we're going to have some limitations and some difficulties
Okay.
doing that. So
Yeah.
that's why I've not mentioned it.
Okay.
Obviously, I would love that.
Right.
But just because I want doesn't mean I always get. I think we can come to a compromise.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm all about the flags. I don't care if we put giant flashing cop lights on top of them and it beeps out fraud as you try to use it. I don't have an issue with that. I do have an issue with a ban on them. I just want to say that the US dollar lost 10% of its buying power in 2025, and people are looking for other ways to maintain their wealth. And cryptocurrency is continuing to grow and be a part of just the general population. A lot of people invest in crypto, and that's why I would have a hard time on a complete ban on it, although it might not be perfect right now. And yeah, those fees are ridiculous. I do think that there is going to be a point when they will be better regulated and also more utilized maybe with people in the future. And so I would hate to go for a ban. Also, speaking about your limbo comment about keeping the money in limbo, that's the number one or a big reason why people use cryptocurrency, is because there isn't a lag time. You know, that's the problem with the SWIFT banking network. And I'm all about trying to come up with a plan and educate the public on the fraud. But I mean, crypto isn't legal tender either. And so people need to be aware of that. I mean, no one in the state of North Dakota is going to call me to ask me to pay my taxes in crypto because it isn't legal tender. And so I think that, I mean, I appreciate all of the information that you gave us, and I'm all about bringing awareness and educating the public and making these machines, you know, scream fraud. I mean, if you don't know what cryptocurrency is and you've never purchased or owned cryptocurrency, you shouldn't be using one of those machines. But I'm all about the education part and putting up signage and going forward with that. As for a ban, I do not support it. And I'm hoping that, you know, between the federal government and the state government, that they can put some regulations on these. I don't really know if that's our job as a city to do that. So, but thank you for the information. And also, you know, if we do talk about, you know, outlawing these machines, you know, there are a lot of other ways that people get frauded. You know, we still have Western Union and money transfers. People are getting frauded with gift cards. I mean, we can't just outlaw something because the 1% is, the 1% of the 1% is getting fraud. So I really just want to be careful. And I mean, I think business owners have a right to own them also. I think that stores have a right to have them on their property if they choose. So I just want to be careful about those rights also going forward. So, thank you.
Ms. Weigel, any comments?
Detective Reading, you talked about you weren't sure about the legitimate purposes for these machines. How about the illegitimate purposes? What are your thoughts on, or what have you seen?
That they're predominantly used for fraud. I don't know any legitimate investor that would take that hit to go and to buy Bitcoin. I've gone on the radio. I've asked people if they've ever, if anybody's ever used this machine to just buy Bitcoin because they want to get into it. Give me a call. I'd like to pick their brain as it. I know that there are other states that are suing Bitcoin companies, and they have some numbers that back it up. That is predominantly used for fraud. So that's my take on it.
And you're not against Bitcoin?
No, I'm not. I actually, like I explained to Ms. Osowski, I recently sold all my crypto this year, but I was high into it. It does have a legitimate purpose. It isn't going to go away. But I would never use one of these machines to buy it. I'll tell you that. So
What did you see when, obviously you've purchased cryptocurrency, what were you seeing for fees when you were investing in it?
Investing, I was really not getting any fees. When you pull it out is when you get the fees. So, I mean, it was still only like 6 or 7% pulling it out of these exchanges. It wasn't high enough for me to say I'm not going to do it, kind of thing. So, like I said, I don't know what the back end is on these machines that you are able to sell. But I mean, if it's 20% going in, I'm curious to find out what it is coming out. So,
Thank you.
Mr. Friedhoffs?
Yes, sir. Thank you. So I wasn't clear. Do we know, who owns these machines? Are these out of state folks, or how do you get into putting a Bitcoin ATM in a business? And then this kind of two-part, how do we get with whoever owns them to maybe put a new HCI in the front that has maybe a checklist that the person using it kind of clicks through, says, hey, I'm not being frauded, even though they may just, answer incorrectly or lie, but just something. So, I don't think the owners are trying to be devious about it. Maybe they are, but just kind of see if we can work with the folks who own each one of those 3 different configurations and put a different HCI on them.
So yeah, I don't know the specifics as to how the Bitcoin ATMs make it into the businesses. I know Circle K is a nationwide one, and most of them have it. I was happy to find out a couple of them in Grand Forks got taken out, and hopefully that continues. So Circle K is a national company. I don't want to single out the businesses that own the other 2, but I'm sure that these companies reached out to a number of different businesses and offered basically almost just like a bank with an ATM. When we put our ATM in there, and whatever the agreement is for housing is what they have. And like I said, I did go to most of the machines that I knew of and put signs on. I do encourage, if there's any local owners or the 2 local owners that that have the machines on there, if they ever want to call me, I've said this several times on the radio as well, call me and I will talk to them about the harm that these have done to the community. And obviously, I'm not going to go in there and single them out and go in there and talk to them, because I don't want to put pressure on them as a law enforcement officer to say, get these out of there. But if they want to talk to me about it, I will talk to them. I will give them the numbers. And is this machine, whatever you're getting for rent, is this machine worth the problems it could cause to the community, kind of thing? So.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I think, education is definitely where we need to start on these. It's such a new technology to most folks, and especially when you're looking at the senior community, this is really something different for them. And they, looking at retirement, it could be something they vision as something that, easy money. And it's definitely not that when you look at it.
Thank you, Mr. Friedhoffs. Mr. Weigel?
Mr. Gosted, I don't believe we have any city codes regarding these types of things, do we?
Excuse me. No, we don't.
So I'm assuming everything that we have would just revert back to state law.
Correct.
Okay. I don't think I need to make a motion, but I'd like to see what our options are from the city attorney aspect. So if maybe the committee agrees, maybe he can look at some options and bring those back to a future meeting for us to things to look at.
Under what authority, thank you, Mr. Weigel, who regulates these sorts of machines? Is there a governing body you could go to?
Well, there's the detective.
Department of Financial Institutions.
Yeah,
Thank you.
that's the department I'd start with is with that new legislation. Work with them, work with the detective because he's much more knowledgeable than I am. I've never used one of these machines before. I've seen them. I didn't really appreciate what they were until I was educated about 2 weeks ago. We've done a little bit of research with respect to the city's authority. There was discussion about a ban. I would hesitate to do that because I know there are some communities that have done that nationwide. St. Paul is one of them. And then they're now in the midst of litigation because of that particular action. So I'd be hesitant to pursue that level of regulatory or action. There may be some methods to license these type of enterprises, but again, we need to take care because there are other types of businesses that are utilized for a mechanism for fraud as well, and we just want to make sure that if we're going to pursue the licensing, and I am not trying to diminish the strife that this has caused to these people. It's a horrible event to have that amount of money being taken from somebody without recovery. But my job is to take a look at what's next and to assure that if we engage in this type of licensing regulatory action, that it can be upheld if somebody challenges it later on. So I'm encouraged to be able to work with the detective, and we'll work with the state and see if what we can come up with, if anything, with respect to this matter.
Thank you, Mr. Gostin. Further comments or questions for the detective? Thank you. I think we have our marching orders. Mr. Gostin, very good. Thank you so much for being
I
here.
do have a victim here that wants to talk.
Oh, certainly.
Okay, Joanne?
Thank you for allowing me to take a little bit of your time this evening. I am a victim of the Geek Squad scam that happened last summer. And I was notified by email that my subscription has been charged to my account and the cost of it had gone up to $500. And when I got that, I thought, I don't have a subscription to that. And so they said, if there are any questions, to call this number. So I did. And from there, he says, oh, but ma'am. Everybody does. You just don't realize it. When you buy a new computer, it's automatically on there and it's free for a number of years. And then all of a sudden you start getting charged for it. And unfortunately, the cost of everything is going up. So now it's $500. And I says, I don't want to renew it. And he said, well, are you sure, ma'am? I said, absolutely. So he says, well, I'm going to have to transfer you to someone else. And so he did. And this gentleman said that, well, ma'am, if you don't want it, I can help you right now. And we can get this sorted out right now online together. And he asked me to get my computer fired up and that he would send me a form to fill out right there online. And in that form, there was a line for the amount to fill in. And he said, just put $500 in that box. He said, and I have to be on there with you. He says, only because I have to fill out the bottom part of the form. And so before you know it, he has got access to my computer, and he was just as smooth as he could be. And before I know it, he says, look, you can see that there has been $500 deposited or will be deposited back into your account. And then a little bit later, it's, oh, ma'am, I filled out the form. I filled out my part of the form, and I filled it out to be 500.0. And then I realized it probably didn't want a decimal and another zero, like 500.00. And I told him that. I said, I think I put one too many zeros. And he says, no. And he continued on. And then pretty soon, what did you do, ma'am? You put in 5,000? And he's, oh my God. This has never happened to me before. I don't know what to do. I'm going to lose my job, and on and on and on. I mean, they're such masters at this. And I'm an honest person, and if $5,000 is in my account by mistake, which I could see looking at my account, that it was, I don't feel it belonged to me. And then within time, he was trying to fix it, and it ended up being, he put it in there 4 times, trying to make it right. And, and the story goes on. And, I was a victim of close to $27,000. And he said, but I could see all this money in my checking account, and normally it wasn't. And so he said the only way that he could get money back is for me to go to my bank, get cash out, and after doing that, he would instruct me how to get the money to him. And so from there, we went to a Circle K and in front of a Bitcoin machine where I stood putting $100 bills in it for quite some time. And I asked the gal at the counter who was just watching me if she knew anything about these, and she says, we have nothing to do with them at all. We just allow them to have them here, and we get paid for having them here. And anyway, it goes on, and I end up putting all that money in there, and of course, then it's gone. It's gone. And as a victim, I feel like I'm a fairly educated person. I don't normally fall for scams like this. Very intimidated, very hurtful. And of course, the money too. That was part of my retirement savings. And it is definitely a loss. And so I said I would come and talk if it would help at all, the next person. And I know of scams, but this one really got me. And I felt stupid. I really did. I felt very stupid afterwards. And I didn't realize it at first until I was talking to a very good friend, and then my daughter, and she said, Mom, you're being scammed. And I said, what? And it's like, so she took my debit card and called the number on the back and closed my account immediately. And as soon as she did that, this gentleman called. And my daughter answered the phone. She said, give me that phone. And she took the phone. And he says, but ma'am, what have you done, ma'am? And my daughter says, Joanne doesn't have time to talk to you anymore. And then Jenna hung up on him, and then he texted me after that even and said, ma'am, what have you done? And it's just like, I don't know. I feel sick about it. And anyway, that's my story.
Thanks for coming and sharing. I'm so sorry that happened to you.
Thank you very much.
Some people are really terrible.
Yeah, right. I don't know how they could go to sleep at night. But his name was Joseph. Mm-hmm. I think he was from Africa.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you, Detective. Appreciate the information tonight. Moving to discussion items. Item 3.1, application for site authorization, Grand Forks Children's Museum for the Spud Jr.
I move approval.
Moved by Osowski,
Second.
second by Weigel. Any comments? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries unanimously. Under item 3.2, Jeff Grogan for visit Greater Grand Forks.
Move approval.
Moved by Osowski, second by Tricia Berg. Thank you. Any comments? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries unanimously. Item 3.3, budget amendment to reallocate funding from fire department's vehicle replacement schedule for fire engine purchase.
I move approval.
Chief, do you want to talk about this, or
I certainly can, or
we have a motion and a second. Does anyone want to hear the spiel? We need a new fire engine. They're front loading today to get it and delivered in 2 years and buying new scuba gear.
And no one hates the fire department. So
And they have the money and
Yeah.
we have the
Good.
money budgeted for it. And, okay,
Can I add just one thing? I
Sure.
just want to give a heads up that we have spoken about this a bit with quite an increased cost in these in this equipment. So as we get into the 2027 budget, it's a bullet point on your staff report, but I just wanted to point it out that we'll be talking about increasing what we're putting into these reserves because we just want to make sure we're good on a long term. We're good for this, but we'll have to look at increasing the annual amount we put aside for that reserve for future purchases.
and then to piggyback on that, we continue to engage any grant opportunities, specifically with North Dakota Department of Emergency Services, where some of our vehicles are purchased through that are identified for regional response to try to help offset these costs of these apparatus.
right. 1.1 or so, 1.1 million almost. for the-
1.167, we can get an $82,000 savings by paying the chassis up front this year and then paying the rest in 28. That keeps us on our 15-year frontline proposed replacement schedule.
Great. There's a motion and a second for item 3.3 for the fire engine. Further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries unanimously. And 3.4 to piggyback that, purchase of the self-contained breathing apparatus and equipment. Moved by Weigel, second by Osowski. Further comment? Hearing no. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you.
Item 3.5, amend city code sections 11-0112 and 11-0117 relating to the impound fee and code cleanup. This is Mark. Good evening.
President Sandy, members of the City Council. Several years ago, we did remove the actual amount of every fee that the city has that we include on the fee list from ordinance so that it was easier and could be reviewed on an annual basis and adjusted if needed through the budget process. In that, we discovered that it was missed in the animal code, 2 sections to take the actual $35 fee out of code. And so we're doing a cleanup to remove that. In further review, there were a couple of minor items. It was missing cat in one place, but it was included, cats were included other places. And then also a little bit of cleanup and rewording of the end regarding the licensing. We still intend to have every animal that comes out of the impound get a license, but we have run into some cases where an animal may be in the impound, but either is too young to yet qualify for a license or may not live in the city of Grand Forks. So therefore, there'd be no real need for them to have a license. And then the other case would be perhaps someone's rabies shot is a little overdue. They can't get the rabies shot at the Humane Society, so they need to be able to get the animal out so that they can get it to the vet and get the rabies shot administered before they can get a license. So trying to clean up some of that wording in there and set a firm time frame that we'll be monitoring to make sure they do come in and get the rabies once the animal's released.
I have a quick question. So we're eliminating all the fees? Or
They go on the fee schedule that we approve once a year as part of the budget.
Okay, so they're just taken off
In
of
a
this.
different place, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, I move approval.
Second.
There's a motion, Osowski, second by Berg. One quick question. Article 11-0112 under the agenda item listing, it specifically says cats, dogs, and ferrets, but there's no mention of ferrets in 11-0112.
So, President Sandy, members of the committee, the entire licensing section includes ferrets, mainly just for the vaccination. Ferrets under state code are required to have a rabies vaccination, but we don't license ferrets. We only license dogs and cats.
God, it must appear in a further section.
Yeah, it's in the overall chapter of code is animals and fowl, and then cats, dogs, and ferrets. So it's in one of the other sections that we're not amending.
Very good. Thank you. There's a motion and a second. Further comments? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Item 3.6, create special assessment district for project number 9010, district number 799, 2026 mill and overlay.
Move approval.
Moved by Veen, second by Osowski. Berg, sorry. She's not normally that obtuse. Thank you. Great. Hearing any other comments? No. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. 3.7, create special assessment district, project numbers 9079, 9080, 9081, 9082, district number 625, 368, 626, and 627. Sanitary sewer, water main, storm sewer, stormwater pond, Burkholz addition, approve engineers report and engineers test service order. Mr. Lieberman. Good evening.
Good evening, President Sandy and members of the committee. This is the next of our residential developments. The developer Oxford 17 approached the city with a desire to develop and build single-family homes, some multifamily, and a commercial lot at the location of Burkholz 8th Edition. This site has recently been by City Council approved for annexation and platting. We are working through a developer's agreement. The city attorney's office is working on a developer's agreement, and we're waiting for a plat to be recorded. But engineering department desires to step forward and get this designed so we can get good bids and actually construct this summer. So tonight we're asking for approval of creation of special assessment districts and approval of the engineer's report and a task order with CPS. This is focused on the wet utilities. We'll be coming back to you in one or two council cycles with the paving and box culvert crossing project. We'll break this development up, the public infrastructure up into two separate solicitation packages. This one will install sanitary sewer, water main, storm sewer, and a stormwater pond at an estimated cost of $2.3 million. The developer did request that the city construct this by special assessment. The only city cost share is on the stormwater pond, and based on the drainage area that drains that pond serves, the city's cost share would be 10% or roughly $90,000, which would be paid for from Fund 5400. As far as consultant task order, as part of the staff package is a proposed task order with CPS. We selected them from a list of pre-qualified engineering firms as the most qualified based on their past experience and their experience with this site in particular. As a measure to control costs and get the best value for our dollar, we did move forward with a cost plus structure for that. So that puts some controls in as far as the cost of engineering services for this development. So with this, tonight we're requesting creation of the assessment districts, approval of the engineer's reports, and approval of the task order with CPS.
Motion to
Pending
approve.
your questions.
Moved by Berg,
Second,
second by
with a
Weigel.
quick comment.
Mr. Weigel?
Glad to see this property is finally being annexed. It probably should have been annexed 20 years ago. Glad to see it's going along South 42nd in an area that's really starting to develop. So I think it'll be great for the city of Grand Forks.
So just looking at the map, there are 22 single-family lots and the rest are multifamily, and it maybe isn't 50-50, but it kind of 50-50. This is $3 million worth of special assessments, 1.5 million to 22 lots. This is why it's so incredibly expensive to build in our community. It's just, it is what it is. It's really, really tough to swallow. So there's a motion and a second. Further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Mr. Phelan, item 3.8, proposed tax incentive policy revision. Greater than 5 years.
Greater than 5 years. Number one, Council President Sandy and committee here. Number one, thanks for the City Council. So in the staff report, I'm just highlighting some of the things that you as City Council have approved over the years on economic development, and you see these throughout the year. Number one, we put in infrastructure with significant cost shares. We use the growth fund to help incentivize projects, and finally, tax incentives are kind of the last piece. So you guys are involved in all of those categories, either through the Jobs Development Authority or through the City Council, and I'm very thankful for all that you guys do to help promote economic development. Is you're kind of at the tip of all things that can happen. The one thing we did last year, as you recall, we did take a look back on the last 10 years and what kind of people have asked. And so I think we have a really good story. And so we highlighted over the last 10 years, I think we've had about 24 projects that have had some sort of incentive. And those could have been Renaissance Zone incentives. That could have been tax increment financing, pilots, and some new and expanding businesses. And so we picked 7 of those projects, and that's contained within your staff report. And those range from, the Simplot high bay freezer to a grease stove to many of the some of the mixed use developments, whether they've been on UND campus or in downtown. And those 7 projects, the pre-development value of those properties was 29 million. After those 7 projects, it was 294 million. So those are just 7 of those 24. And then looking out at the 30-year tax revenue gain, and some of those projects were 5 years, some were 10, some were 15, and some were 20. But if you look out 30 years, we estimate about $64.5 million of additional tax revenue. And, if you break that down, the school board's the highest percentage of the tax bill, and then it's the city, county, and the park district. So I think the point is, whenever projects we've brought forward, the city has led with, those 3 factors that we try to develop projects. Number 2, we've never brought a project forward that didn't add revenue to all the various taxing entities, to include the city of Grand Forks. The other thing I really want to say thank you to the City Council is not only have we invested in partnering with the private sector and growing the tax base and in really needed and projects, you have also invested in a lot of the quality of life investments. And so if you look at the Career Impact Academy, Ultra Sports Complex, and Children's Museum, those are all investments that you guys have made to add even further value to the community. So if you look back over the last 10 years on those public-private partners projects and also these quality of life investments, it's quite a bit, quite extraordinary. And I said that earlier today at another meeting of what has occurred over the last 10 years. It's quite something else. Mayor is going to talk about what he's been doing, and I think a lot of the credit not only to the City Council but to Mayor Wachenski over the last 6 years. We've been on these incentive parts. We've been more aggressive than we were in the previous 4 years, trying to really grow the community. We did a lot of this during the pandemic, and it's all paid off, to be frank. And if you were here in 21 and 22, you didn't know what the future looked like, and we've come out really strong on that. Back in 2017, the North Dakota legislature, I think there was a bad example. I think it was between, if I recall, the city of Bismarck and Burleigh County. And so what the North Dakota legislature did in 2017, I believe, plus or minus, is they required the city of Grand Forks and all cities that lead economic development to go out and seek the approval from both their respective counties and school boards on any incentive that's over greater than 5 years. And so we implemented that, and that's where we implemented the Local Government Advisory Committee, because we wanted to make sure they were informed, even though they didn't we always sent letters. So we did create the local government advisory committee, and that was made up of 2 members of the school board, 2 members of the city council, 2 members of the county commission, and then 1 member of the park district. We also, some of these projects, everyone wanted to know, how do you know if they need the incentive or not? So then we implemented a third-party financial review. And at the time that was Springstead, and then Springstead was bought out by a larger firm called Baker Tilly. And so that's how we ended up with Baker Tilly as our third-party financial advisor. So I think the point is, it's been a really good 10-year run. And I think right now there's some, apprehension about continuing our what we've done in before. And so I'm thankful that Mayor Buczynski's kind of reached out to the other taxing entities, along with the Grand Forks Region EDC and the Chamber, of how do we keep our momentum going in our community, and with a revision in the process that I just described with that. So with that, I'd hand over to Mayor Buczynski.
Mayor?
All right, thank you. So you have we'll call it a policy. It's more of a procedure, a change in the procedure. So in the past, we've had the LGAC, the Local Government Advisory Committee. What this sets forth is something that's probably more intensive. That's going to have all of the boards involved early on, so they've got the information together. They can ask questions together. They can be a part of the entire process, whether it's negotiations, sort of the financial impacts, early and often. So it's going to be ultimately, as you see here, roughly a 6-step process. And largely this was asked for by the other entities, the county and the school board. So they're going to take this in front of their boards and make a decision on moving forward or having some amendments to that. This does also have some larger fees in it, which we've already instituted on the last one that we were looking at, which I think is good, which will have a look back. So it'll be a longer conversation on how we want to operate that. But I think it gives the other entities exactly what they've asked for to be a part of the process. It's not necessarily a policy in and of itself of what we're looking for when it comes to incentives. And that's why I've engaged Sean and Mike, who's the chamber and the EDC board chairs. So they're interested in providing some of their commentary on how they see it from their boards as well. But they've also been engaged in this process of getting the meetings together. So I've been happy to have their support. But I think it's a good step in the right direction to allow for more engagement and even more scrutiny on these types of projects. So with that, if you got any questions for me on what this looks like, we've worked with the city attorney, so we've got all of our statutory requirements in there, and the city administrator to get to what we've got today. But if you got questions for me, certainly ask those as well. But then if you would be so kind to allow a moment for Mr. Gaddy and Mr. McLean.
So Sosky, do you have a question for the mayor?
They can speak. Thank
Okay,
you.
certainly. Thank you for being here, gentlemen.
Yeah, thank you, President Sandy, members of the City Council. I was introduced earlier in my day job with AE2S by Mr. Grasser and the work that AE2S is doing in support of the English Coulee study. I'm here this evening and on this item to speak as my role as the chair of the Grand Forks Region EDC. So thank you. I'll be brief. This conversation has been ongoing, obviously, over the course of the past year, and have reached out, to have conversations, as Mayor Buczynski mentioned, with himself, Chair Hagan of the County Commission, and then President Berger as well of the Grand Forks School District. Just in the context of this conversation is about growth and the growth tools that we have as a community, and we don't have a lot of growth tools at our disposal. We have these these different incentive structures that are outlined and you're well aware of. And we just wanted to see if there wasn't a way, given the focus of the EDC, the focus of the chamber, to engage in the conversation and potentially help facilitate some of the conversation and engage in the discussion. And so with that, I'll offer Mike McLean to introduce himself and talk about some of the discussion we've been having in that regard.
Absolutely. Good evening, Council Sandy, or President Sandy and council members. Like Sean said, Mike McLean representing the chamber, and the conversations we've had and the policy brought forward, I think where we see this as a benefit is just the opportunity to have everybody at the table for improved communication. One thing we've heard in conversations is that maybe there's a lack of communication, or maybe it's too late, or there's not the right amount of information at the right time. So getting everybody together right away, more intense at the beginning, having the opportunity to ask those questions up front, the questions that a school board member might ask versus the city or the county could be totally different. So having everybody hear that at the same time, I think, is also productive. And then the idea of allowing some time, like 6 weeks, to have additional questions and get more information. So then when that opportunity arises where a decision needs to be made, you have that chance to make an informed decision and people feel like they've got the information they need to do that. And then the last point, I think, is just clarity on the expectations. So not just from the boards, but also people that are looking to use these as tools for development or incentive. I think we want to promote those if those are things that they want to look at, and not have them coming into it feeling like they don't know what's going to happen or what they might expect. And so with that, I'm going to just turn it back over to Sean on some other things that we're looking at doing as far as that goes and how that might evolve going forward.
Thanks, Mike. Just to wrap this up, Mayor Bolchinski mentioned what's before you tonight is more process change than it is overall policy change at this time. But we have started a conversation as well around the idea of potentially helping to facilitate some additional policy discussion. And both the chamber and ourselves at the EDC have brought up the idea of potentially engaging outside resources to help facilitate that discussion. The way we operate right now, it does seem that each of these comes forward, and they're all unique when they do come forward, each of the projects. But, we know this is a national conversation around housing is incentivized and what is the best way to do that. And so we did bring up the idea of potentially looking at or soliciting through EDC and chamber resources, some outside, like I said, support and facilitation to have a joint conversation between the school district or the county, the city, and then the park district around how could we potentially jointly develop some sort of policy framework that we all could work within to help make the process a little bit simpler as we consider different types of projects. The one thing I would caution is we don't want that policy to be so constrictive that it ties our hands to unique opportunities or when unique opportunities come along, but at least bring in some outside perspective to help us get out of maybe our own thoughts in our own heads and have some further broader conversation around how can we coalesce around, with all the taxing entities and our growth-minded entities such as the EDC and the chamber to develop something that truly works broadly for our community. So that conversation, that second part of the conversation beyond the process point is something that we're going to look to engage further with the, like I said, the local taxing entities to try and move that along. So that's all we had, I guess, for this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Don't go away. Hold on, Mayor. Did you have something?
Yeah, just so everyone just understands the process. This would involve 2 full meetings with the boards of the school board, the county commission, and ourselves. So a separate meeting where we don't have normal agenda items. The developer would be there. The first meeting would kind of be a work session. As it progresses, there'd be a period to ask questions. Then we'd have a second full meeting where the boards would make an action at that meeting where we'd all be together. It'd be one place for anyone that's for or against the project can come and speak to all the boards. So you don't have developers, citizens having to go to 6, 7 different meetings. They could all get it done in one place. So it should streamline some of the public comment as well. But just for anybody that hadn't read through it, that's kind of the main crux of it.
Mayor, Ms. Wasowski?
Yeah, I have lots of comments, I think. First off, where is our current general process and policy listed at?
You could answer that, Mr. Grassa, but you have it in the presentation. It's pretty well laid out.
Well, I see it in the presentation, but is it listed somewhere online?
I don't think it's an official policy.
Well,
It's
that's
just
what
the
I'm kind of
process that we
wondering.
go through.
Well, that's what I'm kind of wondering. So we are making a process and policy change to not an official process and policy?
Can I
Yeah, go ahead, Mr. Gusson.
When there is and this is for the pilot, right?
Right.
When there's a request to go beyond 5 years, there is an obligation to engage both the county and the school board.
Right.
And the LAGAC was, as Mr. Phelan mentioned, the LAGAC was the process to meet that statutory requirement. I think I've seen some written documentation with respect to the LAGAC and who's a member of it. I don't know if that qualifies as the policy, but it's an implementation of the statutory requirements and delineation of who's on the LGAC and the purpose of the LGAC. And I think this then, to the extent that LGAC documentation exists, this policy would then supersede that process.
Okay, another question I have, you spoke about this when you just talked about that, if someone wants a pilot over 5 years, you must engage with the other taxing entity. Who is required to engage? Not the city of Grand Forks. I'm assuming it's the developer, correct?
I believe it's the city has to send out correspondence to those entities to advise them that this request has been made, and they have a period of 30 days to make a decision.
So, but they've been getting those, right? And yet they're claiming that they're not being notified. I find that a little bit hard to believe.
I think that the boards are made up of a lot of people that have differing opinions on these things. So I'm not sure it's the entire school board, for example.
Right.
But other than people on the school board that have differing opinions.
Yeah, I think it's beyond being notified. There's obviously
Right.
more information than just being notified.
But you guys always go to those other meetings, right? Mr. Phelan does, sometimes the mayor does. And so I guess I really don't understand why we need to have separate meetings. I mean, we are separate taxing entities. I understand that we all live and work in the city of Grand Forks, but how is that vote even going to go? You're going to have council on one side. Is the park board going to be included at all? So we're leaving out that taxing entity.
The park board's part of the park board is part of the city. Park district is incorporated into the city of Grand Forks. That's why we're not separating them out.
Okay. I don't think we need to have joint meetings at all. I think that sounds like a little bit of a waste of time. You guys can go around and promote the projects all you want. I think other members might be also a little bit intimidated when you put us in a larger group all together. Obviously not me, but I really don't like the change in this. I don't think we need to have additional working sessions. These projects are brought in front of us multiple times already. And now what are we? Does the school board just want to listen to our comments? They're able to pull up our meetings. They're recorded. I have to go watch planning and zoning, so I know what's discussed there. Why aren't they watching our meetings to watch what's discussed? I'm required to pay attention to the county commission also and how that affects us. And that's my job as an elected official. I don't think we need to be babysitting and holding their hands that they can't read and reach out for their own information. And so I disagree with having these larger meetings, additional meetings, us all being in one room voting together. I disagree with it. So thank you.
Sean, Mike, thank you for your leadership. Mr. McLean, Mr. Gaddy, thanks for your leadership on this and starting the conversation. I almost feel like we need to analyze this more than getting everybody together and trying to give everybody the same information at the same time. I think our boards philosophically have differences of opinion as to how we want the city to grow. And I think until we get beyond, the school district very publicly wants more revenue, but if we give a pilot, it means there are going to be more kids, and that means we have to teach more and work more, apparently. So I don't know how we get them to actually recognize that having more kids in the school district is good for our community, not a bad thing. Or the county commission where, Mr. Bierke, I like him very much, but he philosophically 100% disagrees the whole concept of providing any sort of a tax incentive. And there might be other people on their board that feel the same way. I don't think that's news to anyone. I don't know how you I think unless there are elections one day where people get elected that feel the same way we do, I'm not sure getting us all together. I'm all for it. I think we should try the conversations. I'm not sure how it's going to change the outcomes on these at all. But maybe to your point, maybe getting some of those consultants in that can help us create an eight-point rubric for the school district would be helpful. I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. What I do know is I don't like the way things are going now, so any sort of a change I think is positive.
Mr. Sandy, that's exactly where I was going to go, is like, I do think we need to have a conversation about philosophy of our community and how we treat incentives as a tool for our community to use. There are, like I said, from an observation standpoint, watching things play out over the last 6-9 months to a year, there are vast differences in what we believe the philosophy of our community is. And I was hoping, and Mike, through our conversations, we're hoping that we could at least start the facilitation of a conversation around how do we potentially come to some consensus. I don't think consensus is absolute agreement, because we're not going to get there. I don't believe that's possible, given some of the philosophical just differences in statements that have been made to this point. But it sounds like something from at least our perspective, we felt like we should try.
Sure.
To do something different.
Do we know, and I know the mayor, you met with the Chair Hagan and Mr. Berger. Were they on board with doing this process as well?
Yeah, I think they were happy with this. They want to be able to have the information from the start. I think we get it before, and they could go back and watch, our meetings at times, but I don't know that I'm going to go back and watch every school board or county commission meeting. I just don't have the time for that. And I think there's a period of time to get comfortable with the project. So I don't see this as being particularly more meetings. I think it could have the potential to have all the information shared at once, but it is something they've been supportive of. I think our collaborative nature has been a big success for our city. I don't expect that this is going to be unanimous decisions. I don't think anyone's going to be intimidated. I think it's people that have a difference of opinion can share that opinion to everybody. I think if you're an elected leader, you should be able to do that, whether you're in front of your own board or everybody at the same time. So I think it's a chance for everyone to hear everyone's voice directly, rather than, people having to speak behind someone else's back at their board. I don't think that's positive for anybody.
Yes, Ms. Osowski?
Oh, I just kind of. Can we do it without having to do votes? Yeah, in a room, like, I think this is our dais, and I don't want to go to the Alara Center, be given a big, presentation, and then having to vote at these joint school board, commission, council meetings. I don't mind really getting together to learn about the project if people, feel that they need additional information, but I don't think we should be going in there giving votes altogether as multiple different committees right there in the room.
If I could just add, we would have a final vote. We'd have a public hearing requirement, so the city would vote at the final meeting after that. So we wouldn't vote at that meeting. The other two entities would. The intention is just to streamline things, but that could be a change that would be made where they could vote separately after that. The intention was to have less meetings, not more. As you said before, you don't want to go to more meetings than you have to.
Right, but if we have to vote on them the next time anyways, it's really not cutting that off our plate. I mean, I don't think that we should do like giant votes like that at all. I think that we're all different taxing entities, and we should be, even if you want to hold off the vote until they have the meeting, they don't need to be presented the project again. We move approval on stuff quickly all the time. So.
President Sandy, to answer your question, yes, they were supportive of trying this.
Yeah, I think,
quite interested in a new process.
I think each group would gavel in its own meeting. So it's not like all 18 of us would be voting at the same time. School district would have a vote, county would have a vote, and we would, for example.
But they're all public meetings, right? I mean,
they are all
so
public
you'd
meetings.
be having different people voting in the same meeting in a public meeting. We're televised, that seems a little bit challenging.
Groveling in front of the school district 4 times a year is challenging as well. I think getting everybody together in the same room will maybe eliminate some challenges, and I think if we try it and see how it goes, if people don't like it, I certainly am not going to, say we have to keep doing it, but I think any sort of a change, I think, would be a positive change.
But if we approve this, then we have to follow it, correct?
We can change our policy anytime we want to.
President Sandy, if I may.
Yes, sir.
One other thing that I don't think has been said yet that we view as a positive is the business friendly aspect of this, where you ask the developer of the project to make fewer dog and pony shows for their project and provide that information all at one time in more of a consolidated fashion to each board. And I do think that's another very positive aspect of this that I don't believe has been mentioned is the business friendly side of the equation here.
And yeah, one other thing I'd add to that is that, if there is a framework that's created that's useful as a tool for the boards and for people looking for the incentives, is that policy can change, right? And if there's a work session where regularly you're getting together when these happen or once a year or whatever that might be, that policy can change. We know that in 10 years, Grand Forks might look different. There might be different agendas at that point or different things that we want to look at. There's going to be different school board members, different county board members every year. So there has to be that opportunity, I think, to make sure that policy can be changed, that's in alignment with the boards at that given time and that different, those different climates.
So do you want us to move in second to change this, how we do business? Yes, says Mr.
Yeah, I
Gasko.
prefer that, yeah.
Okay. Ms. Berg, do you have a comment? Question?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm excited to explore this. I'm excited to see what our other taxing entities end up deciding to do when they bring it to their full board and if they buy into this as well. I think it's difficult as a constituent like myself, like trying to stay on top of the county meeting, the city meeting, the park board, the school board, and looking at their agendas every week. This is going to help consolidate it for constituents to come to one meeting, do one presentation. It's going to make it smoother, I think. And so with that, I'm going to move approval.
Thank you, Ms. Berg. Is there a second? Thank you, Mr. Weigel. Further comments? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Osowski dissents. Thank you. Thank you again for being here tonight. Appreciate it. Looking forward to some new wonderful discussions. Council member discussion matters. Ms. Osowski?
No, thank you, Mr. President.
Ms. Berg?
No, thank you.
Ms. Linsky? Mr. Veen? Mr. Friedolfs?
Nothing here.
Ms. Weigel?
No, thank you.
All right.
I move adjournment.
Second by Osowski, first by Osowski, second by Berg. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Post same sign. Motion carries unanimously. We're adjourned. Thank you. Good meeting.